people's children are going to grow up and like, Mom, Dad, do you have any pictures of me? Like, well, actually we don't, because they've all evaporated.
Not many institutions ever dare to actually look at what's going inside the head of the artist. When an institution is actually coming closer to the way an artist is thinking, it becomes much more richer. And for us, it was really a unique, unprecedented opportunity to be able to do this with one of the most acknowledged writers of our time.
People are most likely to know Douglas for his novel Generation X. I think the exhibition gives a new perspective on his practice, both as a writer and as a visual artist.
Bit rot is a situation that's happening in the world of technology where we simply don't know how to make a digital file permanent. It means we might not even have a record of our society at the moment.
The exhibition is conceived of as a mindscape, you would say, or a mind map to Douglas Coupland. So in that sense, again, combining writing and visual work, but also his own work with work of other artists, works he's been collecting, objects he's been collecting. It's almost as if you peek into Douglas's brain and this is what's in there and this is all the elements that float around, and you see it in a, I think, a very playful constellation of different works.
I grew up in the mountainside of Vancouver. My family, I mean, I love them dearly, but they're kind of crazy and they collect guns, and my brother's a taxidermist. My dad was in the Canadian Air Force. So I grew up surrounded by weapons and dead animals and big pictures of fighter jets. When I became an adult and I began collecting, I was collecting things I thought, boy, I'm escaping my crazy hillbilly family with this modern art. And then after about 8 years, stood back and looked at it, and I realized, oh God, it's just basically everything I grew up with. It's just in a new form. It's like the modern art form. Europe always amazes me because there's so much history everywhere, and how can anyone get anything done looking at all this history? I grew up in a place where history is the shopping mall that they built back in 1950. History, with me, probably begins in October of 1970, when I would have been just under 8 years old, and I was going through an encyclopedia in the school I was attending, and there under P was pop art, and they had Blam by Roy Lichtenstein, and the soup can, Campbell's soup can by Warhol, and I was like, okay, now I get it. I mean, that was when I figured out the world was essentially pop. The catalog's not a traditional catalog. It's small articles on technology and culture and society mixed in with fiction, sort of back and forth. And it creates this really kind of weird feeling in your head. And I think it would be like a soundtrack to the exhibition. It's not music, but I think it would do the same sort of thing. It would just plasters in all the cracks and makes it all feel like it's one continuous thing.
It's always a recalibration between the high culture and low culture, between the ivory tower of contemporary art and theory vis-a-vis visual culture. And I believe Douglas Coupland can actually do that recalibration beautifully.
What I really wanted to show is, what does the internet look like? Like, if you could just open the door and like stick your head in and look like, oh, that's what the internet looks like. Then we got these vacuum robots, the Roombas. I don't know if you have them in Europe. And then we took out the vacuums, and then we put objects attached to the robots. And we had to use really elaborate programming to make them look stupid. And so you've got these objects that are like bump, It really does capture the chaos or the rodeo of internet searching. I mean, it's a zoo out there. No one designed the internet. It just has its own random aesthetic. And I think as time goes on, we're starting to sort of codify that aesthetic and figure out, why things look the way they do, why they don't look the way they do. I think if you're born into it, you don't question it. But I'm in this weird position historically of remembering very well what it used to be like, and I know what it's like now, but now that's fading. So I have no choice but to go forward and figure out what things are going to look like. I have a strange relationship with books. I went to art school and I have a diploma in sculpture. I won't even call it a degree. It's like a piece of paper that says, hey, you studied sculpture. So I began writing literally by accident for a friend, and it very quickly turned into, to be honest, a very good way of paying studio bills. Around 2000, many people are saying, like, Doug, your writing's so visual, isn't it? And then I look back over 10 years and I realized, oh my God, I've been hanging out with the wrong people. That they're writers because they're not the least bit visual, and that's how they escape. Here in the show, there's a lot of evidence of that, of words starting to melt onto images and vice versa. It really sort of pushes to an ambiguous point about where words end and images begin.